it just became so apparent to me that on the biggest day, the biggest stage of your life, you better have more than physical skills. You better have more than a game plan and a scouting report, because the storms are coming.
Whether you live northeast, west, or south, the best fast pitch info comes from the coach's mouth. Welcome to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast with your hosts, Jay Bolden and Ken Kraus.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast. This is Ken Kraus, and along with me is my good buddy Jay Bolden, the man, the myth, the legend, pitching coach extraordinaire, and just all-around great guy. How you doing, Jay?
I'm doing great, Ken. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Hey, I wanted to ask you, we didn't have an episode last week, and I know your softball season started. So how are things going over there at St. Xavier?
We're actually doing pretty well. We had a good weekend. We faced some really tough competition up at the Rosemont Dome up here in Chicago. That was just this past weekend. Faced number 6 in the country, Madonna University from Michigan, and split with them. Played a couple other really good teams this past weekend and came out with a really good record this weekend. This weekend, we're headed out to Davenport, Iowa to play some teams out that direction. And then a week after that, we'll be down in Gulf Shores playing some other tough NAIA teams down in the Gulf Shores area. And with this weather up here, Chicagoland area, I'm really looking forward to the Gulf Shores, let me tell you.
I'll bet you are. I'm sure that'll be fun. And by the way, I just want to let everybody know that Jay is actually, he's driving right now. He had to get on the road a little bit. So if his sound gets kind of funny, that's what it is, but we're not going to hold that against him. We're glad he was able to be on the podcast today because it certainly wouldn't be the same without him.
Absolutely. We're going to get this done one way or the other, Ken.
All right. Well, then let's light this candle. Our guest today comes not from softball, actually, but from the world of basketball. She's a 2-time Olympian, having been an assistant coach for the Canadian women's Olympic basketball team in 1996 and again in 2016. She also spent 20 years at the university level as a head coach, most of it at the University of Calgary, and more than 30 years in various coaching and leadership positions. Her resume includes stints as an assistant coach with the Canadian National Development Team and Director of Coaching Development, Technical Director with Basketball Alberta. Her real passion, though, is in helping athletes improve their mental toughness, that X factor that helps athletes overcome self-inflicted obstacles so they can become champions. She's worked in that area for more than 20 years, including today, where she is a mindset coach in her own business called Winning Matters. Please give a warm From the Coach's Mouth welcome to Shawnee Harle.
Woo, woo.
Hey, woo. Hi,
Welcome, Shawnee.
How are you?
I'm great, and really, really looking forward to this conversation. I think it's such an important one, so I can't wait to get started.
Same here. We think this is a very important thing and probably an area that most coaches would agree is extremely important to their success and which most coaches spend about 2% of their time on. So it's great that we have you on here to kind of provide some guidance. One question I wanted to ask you just to begin with, I know you've got a great coaching background. Were you an athlete growing up?
I sure was. I grew up in a small town in a 1A school. So when you're in a 1A school and you're an athlete, you play everything, from grade 8 onwards. So I've been involved in sport my entire life in one way, shape, or form.
That's great. In addition to basketball, what else did you do? Track, softball?
I did. Actually, I played fast pitch. I played volleyball. I played field hockey. I played soccer.
Wow.
I thought those are all that are for now. That's what came to mind. But that was part of it back then, right? That was part of when you were in school because there was no club. sport back then. There were no travel teams back then. So you played everything that was offered in your local school.
How did you become involved with the Olympic team back in 1996?
I was at that time, I was at the National Coaching Institute at the University of Victoria, working on my coaching qualifications. And I was part of an apprentice program. And that apprentice program allowed me to join that Olympic team. It's funny, isn't it, how life works sometimes? Sometimes you're just at the right place at the right time, and you've got what you need for them to say, oh, hey. And I'm like, yeah, pick me. So a lot of it at that time was right place, right time, and being ready for when the opportunity arose.
And then what brought you back in 2016? That's kind of a large gap. So how'd you wind up getting back involved?
I mean, honestly, I didn't really want to go back and be involved. The sacrifices are enormous, right? It's just all consuming, which it should be. And I didn't know if I wanted to get back into that all consumingness. If there's such a word again. But my colleague at the time was the head coach at the University of Saskatchewan, and she was appointed as the head coach, and we had been rivals forever at the university level. And she asked me if I wanted to be, did I want to be part of it? And I was like, I don't know. I don't even know if I like you. I mean, we were rivals, and I didn't really like anybody at that time that was a rival. But it was the best decision that I ever made. And she and I ended up, yes, we were rivals, but we also, I believe, made a very good coaching team. So that's how I got back involved.
That's very cool. Did the two of you have kind of like complementary approaches rather than being the same, kind of like you were maybe you were the tough one and she was the nice one, or the other way around, or one specialized in offense and one in defense?
You know what? I think it was more of because she didn't need a lot of other kinds of skills to be brought to the table, because she got appointed the Olympic coach for a reason. Mm-hmm. She had a great toolkit. I think what worked well was when we coached against each other. This is what she had said, Shawnee, your teams were always really hard to play against. And part of that is because I wanted to be an out-of-the-box thinker. I didn't want to be predictable. I wanted to be hard to play against. So we had junk defense. We did weird, funky things that people couldn't prepare for. And I think that ended up being one of the strengths when we came together. It wasn't who was good cop, bad cop. It was like, how do we study this game and look at it from a lens that perhaps isn't being looked at, and how can we use it to our advantage? I think that was our biggest strength as a coaching duo.
Nice. The element of surprise. You did a lot of coaching throughout your career, but really where you are, looks like your passion is the mental toughness coach, the mental side of the game. What piqued your interest about that to begin with, as opposed to just continuing to be a standard basketball coach?
Again, this journey called life is always so interesting. I thought I would be a lifetime basketball coach, and I'm glad I wasn't. This is my true calling, but I got to my true calling in a very painful way. At the Olympics in 2016. Which we'd been prepping for, putting all your time and your energy, your resources, and sacrifices. And we had a really, really solid team that we took to the Olympics. And we got eliminated in the quarterfinal by 5 points after being up 21 at the half.
Oh.
And, I left those Olympics in a very dark place. And when I came out of the darkness, I asked myself, what didn't I see? And then the bigger question was, what did I see but refused to look at?
Mm.
And the self-reflection was really healthy. And it just became so apparent to me that on the biggest day, the biggest stage of your life, you better have more than physical skills. You better have more than a game plan and a scouting report, because the storms are coming.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the storms are emotional. They're not physical. They're not tactical. They're not technical. They're the storms of nerves, worry, self-doubt, fear, lack of confidence, fear of losing. And I believe that we do not prepare athletes for those storms. We're not even allowed to talk about those things in sport. Just get out there and be confident. Fake it till you make it. You got this. But I got to experience what happens when you don't got this. And it really, I became very passionate about finding an answer. I'm like, you know what? On the biggest day, the biggest stage of our life, we should be able to show up as our greatest self, not our scared self. And that's what I've been doing since those Olympics, and helping athletes understand what's going on in their heart and their head, and how to calm and manage the storms.
What were some of the things that you did to help athletes work with these things?
The number one thing that we do is we talk about F words.
Okay. Now, we don't use explicit here, so tell me what F words are.
Okay. Face is one. Face your fears. Face your feelings. Stop faking it. It doesn't work. So I teach the opposite. You can't push this stuff down, because it's going to pop back up over and over and over. In fact, I really believe that how we do sport, I think it actually hinders and decreases emotional intelligence.
What do you mean by
us
that?
Not to, it says don't have a feeling. Don't be afraid. Don't let them see you sweat. Hide your nerves. Make sure you don't show anybody that you're ready to pee your pants or throw up right now. Okay. And I do the opposite. Walk towards it. Face your feelings. Face your fears. It's the path to freedom. There's another F word.
Yeah.
This is emotional intelligence. So what I teach athletes is the nerves, the worry, the fear, the self-doubt, it's all coming. We prepare for the storm before the storm. So let's start figuring out, what do we do when nerves pop up? What are you going to do in my sport in basketball when you're standing on the free throw line with 3 seconds left, down one? Like, all of these big moments come all of the time. And I believe that we prepare for them by facing them in advance.
Do you put them mentally into some of those situations? How do you go about doing all of that? It's easy to, I guess, to say, okay, you got to face your fears, but how do you really put them into the spot so that it translates when they're actually under pressure?
Great question. Let's just use nerves, because that one comes up a lot, right? I'm so nervous. When these things happen, this makes me nervous. And the first thing that I show athletes about this emotion called nerves is the reason that they're nervous is because they're thinking about things that are out of their control. If they were in our control, we wouldn't be nervous.
I guess if they were in our control, we would control them, right?
And wouldn't sport be easy?
Yeah. Wouldn't that be fun?
Wouldn't life be easy? Wouldn't work be easy? Mm-hmm. So that's the very first thing that we go. And I asked them, tell me all of the things that make you nervous. And they give me this list. And then I'm like, here's one. Actually, I was working with an athlete last night. And he said, well, I get really nervous about free throws in basketball. And I said, oh, okay. I said, making free throws, is that in or out of your control? And he said in. And I said wrong. So what I'm trying to show them is you're nervous about something that you can't control, but you think you can control it, but it isn't working. So he was thinking about trying to make the shot. And I'm like, well, that's the wrong focus. No wonder you're nervous. Because the other thing that I really believe is they're called feelings because we're supposed to feel them. Our body can't talk to us with words. So it uses feelings to get our attention. And when we're feeling nervous, our body is going, yoo-hoo. You're nervous right now because you're putting your attention on the wrong thing. And we can go, oh, I'm nervous. Oh my goodness, no wonder I'm thinking about trying to make the shot. Okay, what's something that's in my control? Well, shooting free throws is an aiming skill. What do we aim with? Our eyes. Okay, so I can think about where do I want to look? That is in our control. Every sport has these categories: in my control, out of my control. And the emotional storms are usually caused by focus on the category of things that are out of our control.
So, Shawnee, I have a question for you. You were talking about working with a athlete on in the basketball realm. Yeah, do you focus primarily just on one sport, or are you working with athletes across the spectrum?
You know what? Out of all of the clients that I have, I think I have 2 basketball athletes. So that's less than 1% of my clients. Because these concepts are universal. They go across sport. In fact, I'm working with an equestrian rider. She has a horse. They're both athletes. The horse is an athlete, and so is the rider. So these concepts are universal.
Must be tougher to convince the horse to put his or her emotions aside.
Well, what I'm working on this equestrian rider is, I'm like, do you know that your horse feels everything that you do? So you better really pay attention to your feelings, because your horse will take on whatever it is that you're feeling. By the way, this is a message for coaches. Your athletes take on whatever it is that you're feeling, because feelings have an energy to them. They show up in nonverbal body language. They show up in the tone of our voice. And athletes pick up on these things all of the time, which leads me to another point. It's okay. I'm hoping it's okay to take a little detour here.
Oh, absolutely.
Is because we're talking about fear, right? Nerves is another word for fear. Pressure, another word is fear. What I believe is that fear is a learned behavior. We're not born with that. It's a learned behavior. Think about a coloring book. You give a child a coloring book and crayons. They color all over the place. They smush the colors everywhere. And they hold the picture up and somebody goes, that is the most beautiful picture I've ever seen. And it goes up on the fridge.
Uh-huh.
And then at some point, same coloring book, same crayon, smushing it around. They hold the picture up and somebody goes, why did you color outside the lines? Go redo that. And that picture does not go up on the fridge. And in sport, if fear is a learned behavior, my question is, who's teaching it?
That's a great question. You think that comes a lot from the coaches? Just, kind of demanding things and oftentimes maybe pushing athletes more on outcomes than they are in process?
Yes, it comes from the coaches and the parents, because the number one thing that the athletes are afraid of is failure. Because in sport, failure, however you want to define that term, it gets punished. Either physical punishment, running lines, doing laps, whatever it is, verbal punishment, which is criticism. Also getting pulled every time you make a mistake, showing negative body language. And I'll tell you, I work with athletes every day, from Olympians and equestrian riders. My youngest athlete is a 7-year-old hockey player, and every single one of them has the exact same fear. And it's the fear of, if I do this thing and it doesn't work out, what's the consequence going to be? And it puts them in jail because they play it safe. They don't take risks. They don't raise their hand. They don't go to the front of the line, and they don't try hard things because they're afraid of what the consequences are going to be.
Yeah, I've certainly seen that a lot. I know Jay's seen it as well. You have coaches and, people admire them for their toughness, but, kid gets out there, makes a physical error in a game, gets pulled out in the middle of an inning, basically embarrassed in front of all of their teammates, their friends who are there, their parents, their grandparents, whoever else happens to be there. And you can just tell. You do that a few times to a kid and they are going to play scared, and they're not going to put their best effort in anymore. They're going to be, watching that ground ball come at them, and all they can think about is don't blow it, don't blow it.
And again, do you see how crazy this whole thing that we do? We're teaching them to fear something that is out of their control. Making errors, that is out of our control. If it was in our control, we would never make an error. Striking out of our control. If it was in our control, we would never strike out. So we're teaching them to fear things that they actually can't do anything about. We don't spend any time rewarding the process. There are no stats for the process. There are only stats for the outcome. And it gets in the way all the damn time. I ask coaches, what would you work on in practices? How would you show up in games if there was no such thing as a scoreboard? If there was no way of knowing who won and who lost? What would you say? What would you do? Who would you play? What would you work on in your practices if you didn't know what the score was? Because the score always gets in the way. And of all of the clients that I work with business clients, I work with athletes, parents, and coaches. The clients that are most fearful are coaches.
Why is that? What are they afraid of?
Losing. Because that's where they feel their judgment goes. When they lose, right? We get stuck in this concept called FOPO, F-O-P-O, fear of people's opinions. So our ego gets in the way. We can't handle losing. And so what do? We yell. We have hissy fits. We yank athletes. We bench them. We swear. We yell at umpires. When we lose, we make excuses. Then in the dugout, we go and we yell at our kids. We use blame, shame, and guilt. Because we're worried. What are people going to think? What are the parents going to think? What's social media going to think? What am I going to think? What are my peers going to think? And yet the truth is, losing is normal.
True. Even the Kansas City Chiefs lose.
There we go.
Shawnee, real quick, if you don't mind, what are some tips that you can give to maybe some coaches that are listening to this podcast today of ways that they can help not instill fear into their players? Is there things they can do culturally? Is there, things that they can work on that are going to put their players to be out there, be comfortable, to be able to make those mistakes and to play fearlessly? Because, like you said, I've seen players that play with a lot of fear and are afraid to make any mistakes, and then I've also seen players that do play fearlessly. And the difference is, in my opinion, is drastic between those two. What tips could you give to some of the coaches listening that might help them allow their players to play more fearlessly?
The number one thing that every coach has to do first is face their own fear. If they don't handle their own fear, they will always put it on to the players, consciously or unconsciously. So that's the first thing. Handle your own fear. And this is the question you have to ask yourself, coaches. Can you handle losing? Because that's your biggest fear. Okay, so what do we do with it next? Remember what I said, athletes are fearful because of consequences. What if we figured out how to give athletes a safe place to land? So we did this. So you know what? When I work with coaches, I ask them this. Do you value risk-taking? Yes. Do you value independent thinking? Yes. Do you like it when your athletes try hard things? Yes. Do you value courage? Yes. And then I'm like, show me how you measure it. They don't. So the second point I'm going to bring in is what matters gets measured. Here are 3 ways that you can demonstrate courage in this drill, or 2 ways. Why don't we ever run drills where the only way you can score a point or be successful in the drill is because you took a risk, you tried something hard, and that's how we score it. So what matters gets measured. And then we go, oh, I want you to do these things. And we're giving points. When you swing, when you flat out swing, fully committed at the first pitch, that's a point. I don't give a crap what happens to the ball. Just fully committed, flat out 100%. You get a point for that. The athlete goes, what? I get a point instead of, what are you doing? Why are you swinging at the first pitch? We just talked about that. So we give them a safe place to land by measuring what we believe matters, and we reward them for the things that we believe are important. I tell coaches all the time, you need your own stat sheet. You don't need that little book that has all those little things in it and about this many runners were here when this pitch and that pitch. Just the book's taking care of that. Give the athletes a different stat sheet. Because I can tell you right now, any athlete that wants to play at the next level and they haven't handled their fear, good luck with playing at the next level. How do we help them prepare for the next level? How could we help somebody step up to the plate and they're just standing there and it's like, let's go. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but holy crap, am I here right now? And you're going to feel me. You're going to see me. And I don't know what's going to happen, but let's go. Instead of, oh, I hope something good happens. Same with base runners. Same with fielding ground balls. Same as running a ball down in the outfield. How do we help them? Just freaking go for it. Here's the question I ask athletes all the time. Coaches, this would be a good one for you to ask your athletes. That's how I say to athletes when I'm working with them. How would you show up in your next game or your next practice if you weren't afraid? How would you show up? And they're like, holy, I would be like, boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, well, why aren't you doing that? And I know the answer is because if they do that and it doesn't work out, there are consequences.
And then do you think that because they think there will be consequences, that it might not work out, that it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy? It doesn't work out because they're afraid to do it, and then they try it, and it doesn't work out, and that just confirms what they were thinking to begin with?
Yeah. You know what an uncommitted swing looks like at the plate? Mm-hmm. You know, somebody can say, well, coach told me to swing at the first pitch. I'm like, that wasn't a swing. My grandma could have done that. Like, we know what it's like, let's go. Because you're right. As long as we have fear, we might try whatever it is that we're supposed to be doing, but it's not a committed try. It's like that half-hearted swing where you're hoping for something good to happen, right? Hoping for something to happen instead of making something happen. That's the difference.
So I have to tell you a quick story. One of my players a bunch of years ago, it was my assistant coach's daughter. She played at a different high school than my daughter did, and their coach was very controlling and all that. You know, the girl that had played for me, Stephanie, she saw an opportunity. The ball went into the dirt, and we'd always trained our runners. You see that ball go in the dirt, take off for the next base, steal the base. Well, she saw it go in there. She takes off. She winds up on second base. And the coach is looking at her and says, what were you doing? Why did you go on that? And she goes, well, do you want me to go back? She'd been successful. She took initiative. She'd been successful. Right. And her reward for that was getting yelled at by the coach because the coach didn't tell her to steal.
Well, what I want to point out that you've shown us is coaches that are full of fear. So fear results in now I need to feel control. The only way I can kind of manage my fear a little bit is I need to have more control. And there's a perfect example of having control. You didn't steal on my terms. How dare you?
As you talk about working with these athletes, I always think about like a chiropractor. Most people don't go to a chiropractor until they basically can't walk or sit or lay down comfortably anymore. I'd say it's probably 99%. When they're in so much pain, they finally go in. Is that what you see with yours? Is that in order, at least initially, for athletes to come in and say, I really need to talk to a mental toughness coach? Are they just hurting so badly that they have to go in there? Or, are there kids that you have or athletes you have that recognize that, hey, you know what, this would probably be a good idea to get ahead of that?
I'd say less than 1% are being proactive.
Okay.
And part of it is it's still not completely culturally accepted. Where we still have that tough guy mentality very much in sport. So it's not completely accepted. And if I need to work on my mental game, I guess that means I'm weak. So I would say less than 1% are proactive. Typically what happens when clients come to see me is they're like, parents have hired a private coach in some way, shape, and form. They're doing more training, more practicing, more private coaching, and not getting return on investment. And they kind of finally figure out, wow, it must be something other than the physical that's holding my athlete back. And they're right. And so that's typically what happens. It's a reaction to we've done more, we've invested in more, and we're not getting different results.
Shawnee, if I can for a second, how much do you think social media is a cause or has a lot to do with some of the lack of mental toughness, if you will, or some of that they're missing out because this kid or this athlete is doing X, Y, and Z, and they're not doing that. So they've got to keep up with that kid. So they're doing more, comparing themselves to each other. Is that something that you run into when you're dealing with some of your clients? Is that, social media is kind of like everybody's posting what they're doing and who they're getting offers from. What's your kind of take on that, if you don't mind?
Every single athlete that I'm working with in high school that wants to play after high school is in that trap. I just talked to an athlete the other day. Oh yeah, like my friends, they're all getting attention. It's super important that this topic gets talked about because it's happening all over the place. And again, I think athletes don't have a toolkit to know what to do with it. They have goals and dreams and aspirations. And if they're not leading the pack with offers and emails and letters and attention, self-doubt starts to set in. And social media is a huge factor. It's a big factor in this. Anyway, here's what I do with it, with the athletes that I'm working with, is I tell them, I asked them this, who do you think your most difficult opponent is? Like, what do you think you need to do to look better? Because that's what they're all thinking of. How do I look better? And I'm like, well, who do you think your most difficult opponent is? And they never get the answer right. Because the right answer is the opponent is within.
Yep.
It's me against me. And I also say this, the most difficult opponent you will ever face is yourself. And when they are looking out here, well, what had happened over there? They got this letter, they're getting this attention. Again, I come back to what's in your control. None of that is in your control. So we have to go back inside. In fact, I did a social media post about this on comparison. Is like, if there are other people getting letters and stuff going on, instead of saying, oh, how come not me? And they're getting ahead and all that. You look at there and go, you know what? What are they doing that I'm not? So we can use it as a positive. Comparison can actually be a motivator, but it can also be a great fear creator. depending on which way we look at it. So I teach my clients, go and look at somebody that has something that you want and self-reflect and say, what am I not doing that they're doing? Because the opponent is within. The answers are always inside. They are not outside.
Yeah, see, and Jay makes me feel bad about myself all the time because I see all of his posts, all of his kids are doing so well. He's got all these D1 signings or college signings, and I'm looking and I said, boy, I just don't have those kind of things going on right now. So, I think that it can affect anybody. Love you though, buddy.
The other thing I would add to this that I think is helpful for coaches and parents is to help our athletes differentiate between fluff and substance. Because social media is 90% fluff. And I ask athletes, I said, so these athletes I said, have you ever seen a social media post about their lowlights? They're like, lowlights? I'm like, I know, you only see the highlights. You ever see any of the lowlights? They're like, no. I'm like, well, then that's the fluff. We want substance. And what I also know about most coaches that are coaching at the post-secondary level, they know what substance looks like. And they know what fluff looks like. So make dang sure you're being the substance. And then it comes back again. It's me versus me.
Mm-hmm. I'm just curious about this. Do you ever work with people in the corporate world? Seems like these skills would translate pretty well, or is your plate just too full with athletes?
No, I do work in the corporate world because what we're actually talking about is emotional intelligence and self-awareness. We use it right now in a sport context, but these are skills that help leaders of all walks of life to be more emotionally intelligent, more self-aware, facing our fear. Every corporate leader that I work with has fears. And it all comes back, until you face your deepest fear, you will never show up as your greatest self. That line is true for all of us in all pieces of our life. So yes, this transfers to the corporate world as well.
One of the tough things about fast pitch softball is that it's a game built on failure. I think more than any other sport, you go to the plate and you fail 7 times out of 10 and you're an all-star. You're a pitcher and you pitch a tremendous game all the way through. You throw, say, 120 pitches in a game and 119 of them are spot on. One of them isn't, and you give up a home run and you lose the game. So, how do you handle that aspect of the game, when you work with softball players specifically? How do you get them into that mentality that failure can be good, it can teach, and it's inevitable, so you can't shy away from it, you can't fear it, you have to embrace it? You're smiling. I can see that. You can't see it. We're not using video on the podcast, but Shawnee is smiling. She's got a great answer coming, I can tell.
My first answer, this isn't the answer that made me smile. That's my second answer. But here's my first answer. Doesn't it come back to, again, the fact that we're so outcome focused? There was no reward for, they hit that pitch out of the park, but it was the right pitch and you missed by 3 centimeters. You missed by such a small a margin. It was the right decision. There's no reward for the other 99 pitches that were absolutely amazing. Same with hitters. We put the emphasis on the strikeouts. We don't say, that was a great at bat. I don't give a crap if you got on base or didn't get on base. That was a great at bat, and we're going to reward you for a great at bat. So again, process versus outcome. Here's the second thing. This is the part that made me smile, because I think this is powerful in sport. It's another way of handling fear, because remember, the fear is failure. What are people thinking? But there's another layer here. The other reason there is such a high degree of failure. Remember, I used the word consequences because consequences come with failure. Right. The word that I actually use more often is what comes with failure is judgment. And that's what we're trying to always avoid, right? The fear of disapproval, the fear of being judged, the fear of feeling lesser than, the fear of being excluded, right? It's all based on judgment. And what I teach athletes is about self-judgment. And I say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard are you on yourself? Do you know how rare it is that somebody gives me a number under 8? Like, the answer is always 8 or 9. And this is what I say to them. Don't be proud of that. Because it's hindering your performance. But this is what sport has taught us. Yeah, I'm really hard on myself. Coaches be like, yeah, my athletes are really hard on themselves. I'm like, stop wearing it as a badge of honor. It's hindering performance. Because every athlete that I've worked with that gives themselves an 8 or a 9, how hard are they on themselves? Do you know how high the self-judgment is? And now we start putting the pieces together. The higher my self-judgment, the less likely I am to put myself out there, to try something hard, to swing at the first pitch, to steal second even when I shouldn't. Because if it doesn't work out, my negative self-talk and my self-judgment is going to be over the roof. I'm going to feel like a piece of crap for the next 2 days or 3 or 4, or whatever it is. What I teach athletes is, here's the best way to handle failure. Instead of judging yourself when you fail, do the opposite. And it's another one of my favorite F words. Try forgiveness. When has that word ever been used in sport? To be able to say this, I was at that bat. I did everything I could to the best of my ability, and it didn't work out. And I forgive myself for being imperfect. And here's how it is. You do this. Yeah. Let's say you struck out. That's okay. You know what? Next time, be a little bit more patient on the first pitch. That's okay. Give yourself a coaching tip, because self-judgment does the opposite. You suck. I knew I sucked. I knew I wasn't ready. This is ridiculous. And we stay in the problem, stay in the problem, stay in the problem. And the self-judgment and the negative self-talk decreases performance. What if we could look at failure as normal, expected? That's okay. Give yourself a coaching tip that helps solve the problem for the next time. That's what forgiveness looks like in sport.
So going along with that, do you think that a lot of times the failure comes up because they just athletes give up before they kind of find their way through? They can't accept the failure, and so they just say, I'm going to stop. It's sort of like the old joke about, the guy who invented 6-up. He was so close.
I think that if we could get mental toughness tools earlier to our athletes, where failure is normal, mistakes are normal, striking out is normal, errors are normal, getting thrown out at second base is normal, throwing the ball over the second baseman's head while you're trying to get the runner out is normal. This is part of sport. It is a game of mistakes. If we started instilling that earlier, then I think we wouldn't fear failure as much. In the meantime, what can we do with our athletes that are afraid of failure? Is we stop thinking about the failure, because remember, the failure is the outcome. We go back to getting them to focus on the process, and we measure and we reward the process. That was a great at bat. And I would say coaches have it. Why was it a great at bat? Athletes need proof and evidence, even if they struck out. Do you know what? There are times at the lower levels where, in my opinion, a walk is a really bad at bat. Because if you just stand up there long enough, you're going to get walked because the pitcher is so crappy. Is that a good at bat? Not in my books, because it's not courageous.
I agree.
So, how do we handle the fear of failure? Is we start saying failure is normal. We want you to fail. because that's the only way growth happens. And all we're going to do is get you to focus on the process. And then you get better at saying, you know what, I'm going to do this. And then the chips are going to fall where they may. And no matter where the chips fall, I can handle it because I have a safe place to land.
Do you think there's too much emphasis on winning overall versus learning the game or learning the sport?
Look, I freaking love winning. It's the name of my business. Winning matters. I'm an adult athlete. I love, love, love winning. Here's what I've gotten better at. Losing just doesn't piss me off as much as it used to. So, I shouldn't say that word. Losing doesn't bother me because of this. This is what I've gotten better at. I'm not opposed to winning because it's why we're kind of like, it's the ultimate goal, but this is what I've gotten better at. There are two truths. Every time I show up, there are two truths. I'm either going to win or I'm not going to win. And that's the truth. I've gotten better at accepting that is the truth. I might win, I might not. I prefer winning, but losing no longer devastates me. It disappoints me, but I think disappointment is a healthy emotion. I think devastation around losing is an unhealthy emotion. So I think it's this balance. We want to win, but we don't need to win. Need is needy. Need is a fear-based behavior.
So what are 3 things athletes can do to kind of start getting their minds right? How can they help themselves become more mentally tough? Kind of 3 executable things, I guess.
The first one I would do is I would ask your athletes, and if there's any parents that listen to this, ask your athlete, okay, here comes this next game or this next practice, and do this. What's one thing that you want to do in this game or this practice or this competition that if you try it, you'll feel proud of yourself?
That's a good one.
Right? You can see where we're going. For example, I'm swinging at the first pitch. I don't care if I have to have a step ladder to reach it. Okay. I'm swinging at the first pitch, fully committed no matter what. And I'm going to be proud of myself for having the courage to do that. Right? So we pick one thing that is considered courageous. Say, this is that one thing. And maybe it'll be like, okay, I'm going to do this one thing somewhere in the first 3 innings. So we pick one thing that's process oriented, that's in our control, that when we do it, we're like, wow, I did that thing. It wasn't easy and I did it. That's the first thing that I would say.
Okay.
The second thing I would say is, when you pick the thing that you want to do and it doesn't work out, say this, that's okay. I see what happened there. This is how I fix it. And I get to have a do-over next inning. I'm going for it again.
So there's another F word, right? Fix it.
Fix it. Oh, thank you. I didn't think of that F word. The third thing that I would say is we're supposed to be doing this thing called sport because why? I really feel like athletes, parents, and coaches have forgotten their why. Why did we sign up for this in the first place? Because I ask athletes I work with, you're doing your sport. When was the last time you played freely? When was the last time the sport made your heart sing? When was the last time you felt joy? And for many of them, they're like, oh my goodness, they can't remember the last time. Or if they think of something joyful or and fun, it wasn't on the field of play. It was on the bus with their teammates. or it was somewhere off of the field of play. And so I think the third thing I would ask them is, remember your why, and remember that fear steals your joy. So ask yourself, how would I show up today? How would I play? How would I swing? How would I run? How would I field if I wasn't afraid?
I first heard this, I think, in the movie Mr. Baseball, but I've heard it a few different times in different places, and I think you always have to remember, no matter what you're doing, it's a game, and games are supposed to be fun.
And if people don't like the word fun, it's another F word, then I say switch it with satisfying. I enjoyed that. It was satisfying. It was a growth opportunity. This is what I learned from it. So maybe if you don't like the word fun, then don't use that word, but pick another word that taps into our heart of why we started doing this sport in the first place.
That's great. So I want to ask you a quick question here. I know we're kind of running up against the time window, but do you have any success stories, maybe one success story that you want to talk about that just kind of makes your heart sing?
Yes, I do. And it was a recent one. I was working. I don't know how this athlete found me. I think they found me on social media. Their mom found me. And this athlete was in a huge slump. And this athlete is a very successful speed skater in a huge slump. Didn't love the sport, didn't love going to practices, had taken some time off, not feeling it. Signs up to work with me, and we just worked through all of the mental toughness tools over, I want to say 8 weeks. Doesn't matter what the time frame is. Get this athlete all prepared. Take her through everything. And we get a storm plan. I'm really big on storm plans because the storm's coming whether you want it or not. So you better have a plan for when the storm shows up. And this athlete is at a really, really big championship, messages me, Shawnee, so it was the day before the big race, just had our pre-race prep. And after it, she said, I had to skate over to the garbage can and I puked. And everyone saw. And I said, is this the first time in your life you've ever puked in your sport? She's like, no. I said, have you ever seen any other speed skaters puke? She's like, yeah. I'm like, no kidding. Do you know how much lactic acid their bodies are trying to work through? It's just incredibly difficult sport. I said, okay. So I said, so would you agree with me that puking is normal? And they're like, yeah, but I've never done it on the pre-race before. And I'm like, okay. And I said, all right. I said, so let's get clear on the puking. Was it before, during, or after? After. I said, okay. Do you believe that you can race fast tomorrow, even if you puke after? That athlete said, yeah, okay, yeah, I do. I can't, yeah. I said, you may or may not puke tomorrow. I don't know. But isn't the goal to skate fast? Puke after? Puke before? I said, I don't care. I said, have you ever puked during? And she's like, well, no. I'm like, okay, then we're good. And the cool thing is, I got a text message the day after, and I got to watch it online. The next day, that athlete was a national champion.
Wow.
But it was the ability to handle the storm, the nerves, and the worry about puking. And what did puking mean? Does puking mean I'm not ready? Does it mean I'm too nervous? All of these things. And she was able to use her mental toughness tools and show up the next day and ended up being a junior national champion.
Wow, that's fantastic. What a great story, too. And, what a great accomplishment for that athlete to be able to work through it.
Isn't that a good phrase? Work through it. Instead of avoid it, pretend it isn't there, hope it goes away. Work through it.
Yep. It's kind of like the people down in Florida, right? They know the hurricane is coming, and they can either pretend that it's not, or they can put some boards up on the windows and batten down all of their patio furniture and prepare.
Right on.
So any cautionary tales about someone perhaps that didn't prepare that way and kind of came to regret it? Or is that just kind of a common thing that...
I'll answer it more generally because this is what tends to happen. Athletes will get this mental toughness toolkit and they will show up at the competition and they don't use the toolkit. They're like, oh, I forgot. I'm like, yeah. And it never goes well. So what I also think is really important when we're learning a new skill, mental toughness is a skill, by the way. We're not necessarily born with it. Skill means we can sharpen it, we can get better at it. And so what I tell athletes and anybody that's listening and coaches, if you're listening and you're trying to get your athletes to remember some of these things, remember the biggest thing that's hard for them is the remembering. If they would just remember, they could do it, but they don't remember. And so I tell them to get a visual cue. Put a piece of tape on your water bottle. Write something. You know what? I have a back catcher who has on the Sharpie on her glove hand written right along the thumb. She has the word courage written right along the thumb. So we sometimes need visual cues because when we get into the storm, we get this narrow vision that we actually have tools for the storm and we just forget to use them. So that's very common. A failure, there's the word again, but I'm using that because we know what that means. Things didn't go as planned and they're like, oh my goodness, I didn't use my tools. Great. Here's the plan for next time. Get visual cues, get reminders. Because you have tools and they work, but only if you use them.
Yep, got to take advantage of those things. All right, so again, we appreciate it. You've given us a lot of great insights here, a lot of great stories. And I think, again, this is a very undercoached aspect of the game and probably a very misunderstood part of the game, even by coaches themselves. They'll all give it lip service. So let's say there's an athlete listening right now or a coach or a parent or someone who says, I think I could use some of that. How do they get in touch with you?
They can just contact me. Everything is on my website. My website is ShawneeHarle.com. My first name and last name. You probably have it in the show notes. And another way to get me is on social media. I post 4 days a week on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm even on TikTok. What a world. What a world. So people can contact me through my social media channels also.
Well, that's fantastic. Shawnee, thank you so much for spending an hour with us and chatting about all of this. We really appreciate it. Both Jay and I are
thank you
happy
so
you
much.
were able to join us. We wish you great luck going forward. I hope some of my kids listen to this. I'll certainly be trying to send them your way because I know a few kids that could probably benefit from some of this. And it's not necessarily the people that you would think, they're on the bottom end of things. More, even people at the top, right? High level athletes like the one you were describing can use those or need those mental toughness tools just as much.
Great. Thank you for the invitation and thank you for bringing this important topic to light.
All right. Well, thank you. And I'm going to say on behalf of Jay Bolden and myself, we wish everybody the best. Hope you enjoyed the podcast from the coach's mouth, and we'll see you next time.